This is Ayla, beautiful Swedish Elkhound, Elkhound. It would be my pleasure if every single person in the world had an opportunity to have a dog as good as this dog. And it's our mission, of course, to raise these good dogs and make sure families have that chance. A phenomenal dog out here. We're out on the bear trail. It's a beautiful day. It's early May and just incredible weather and incredible times, and we're just having a great day. Now I hiked with Ayla since she was, I sat with her when she was born. She went and visited out in Saskatchewan for a while, her best pal Rooney, but she's back here with me now. Lindsay and Blair had her there for quite a while there, and they enjoyed her company. But Ayla missed the mountains, so she came back home with me. Now I want to talk to you about a few things today. There's no set category, but I'll tell you a fair bit of details. Some of the things are going to regard to health, some will be toward care and exercise and nutrition and that sort of thing. But I want to talk about certain things as well, because I'm a preservation breeder and I have both types of Elkhounds, the Norwegian and the Swedish, and I'm the only preservation breeder in North America. So I want to give you a little insight into the Elkhounds. I run Camilla Kennels. We've got co-breeders and we've got pups like this available, and we've got more litters coming. We've got Norwegian pups on the ground and Norwegian pups coming. Now, I want to let you know that as a preservation breeder, we have no known defects in the bloodlines that we have. That's why we are a preservation breeder. So we continue with genetics that have no known defects. I want to clarify a couple of things for people, and I'll talk about the hips. A lot of people will ask, well, not a lot, maybe just a few, but people do ask if I test for hip dysplasia, and we do not. And the reason for it is for a number of things. First off, in a preservation line, unless it ever appears in a dog that we raise, there would be no reason to ever try and look for it in any mechanism, and currently there's no known mechanism. So there's no way to test. Did you know that there is no gene known that they can test for? So these so-called people that are, they're normally overeducated, deep state, people that are paid to write misleading articles. And there is no gene detected anywhere yet on the planet that correlates to hip dysplasia. Now, hip dysplasia is not hereditary. That's the other thing. People are all misinformed on that. It is not hereditary. Did you know that, say, we'll take a breed that does have hip dysplasia show up, and I'll use chocolate labs. You can have a litter of chocolate labs from great parents, the pups are all healthy, everything good, and let's say there's 8 pups, and you can send 4 of them to families there and 4 of them to families over here, and all the 4 over here overfeed the pups, and they feed them way too much. And these guys feed them raw and don't feed them any more than they need to keep them healthy. And they feed them the right amount and optimum levels of raw and good quality food. These guys just pound food in all the time over here. So all of these guys will show hip dysplasia. Almost all of them. Overfeeding is the #1 cause for it. Now, it has nothing to do with the genetics. It's just those pups ate more than they should have. And so that is your number one problem. Get on raw, don't overfeed, keep your dog healthy, and the dog will not show symptoms, and that's for any breed. Now, you can also induce that by work. So sled dogs have been tested over and over, and this is well proven, that older sled dogs that have a long life pulling will wear their joints out and just end up with it. It's from work. And that is another cause and effect. It's not genetic. Again, no amount of testing in the parents would account for both of those instances. It's just futile and waste of money. Now, anybody that says you have it in a pup, they're giving you a bunch of crap because the joints aren't even fully formed yet. So don't even believe that nonsense. If the dog is 4 or 5 and develops something, you can look at it at that point, but before that time you're wasting your money. And anybody that says that you can take a pup under 2 years in and get an accurate assessment is full of shit. Like, there's no doubt about it. So don't believe any of that nonsense. Now, you can also take a mature dog, a 4 or 5 year old dog out, and you can put it in situations that constantly stress and damage the ball socket. And that again comes back to the work aspect, the lifestyle aspect. So make sure you're checking that. Don't put it on a hockey rink, for example, continuously on a hockey rink. Don't jump from high obstacles all the time and onto slippery surfaces, things of that nature. So I want to talk a little bit about cancer as well. Cancer, again, is not hereditary. That is entirely food and environment related, and it's parasite control is your number one way to prevent that. Grounding is almost the second highest point, and food. You have to feed very, very good food, and primarily raw, and make sure that you have the fish in the diets. Cancer can be caused by sleeping in the house, of course, because it's off of grounding. There's electromagnetic frequencies in there that are damaging to the dog. The cell structure of the dog matures a lot faster than ours, so EMF, chlorine in the water, any types of fluoride in the water, any parasite loads that it's carrying, they all contribute to cancer much faster. Now, if you take processed food, all of the omega-3 essential fatty acids are distorted and unusable to the dog once you heat that food. So processed food is almost like poison to an Elkhound. Poison to any dog, but it's almost like poison because they cannot utilize the essential fatty acids in the food, and that's what builds their cell wall. The cell wall is always built by the essential fatty acids, and it does a whole bunch of other things. But the omega-3 and the omega-6 are formed before they come into the Elkhound by nature, and they're formed in the right fashion. And what happens is if you heat them, you distort that form and they can no longer use that. Now there's many other aspects to it, but this constant non-essential vitamin supplementation of very, very cheap and very derogatory vitamins into dog food is very bad for them. They cannot utilize them. It's very, very poor. There's many other things that cause allergic reactions, so grains and peas and all of that kind of stuff, these field ingredients that should never be fed to a dog, and then they're heated and distorted. They're literally rancid by the time you give them to the dog. So those are where your cancer is coming from. And you can deal with a lot of that, of course, just having the proper rations, making sure they're getting all the grounding they need. If they can sleep outside, way better, of course. No EMF around them. And then water. You really got to watch the water. If you haven't tested your own water, you have to ask yourself why, because there's good labs around. And get your water tested and give pure water to the dog. It needs pure water. If you can get it up to where it can get spring water, that's ideal. That's the very best water. The higher the elevation, the better. So this water here is pure as can be. Her and I, we can just drink out of this and be happy all our lives. Now, so again, that's not hereditary. Now, you will come across, we'll call it a skin condition for now. It's called cysts, sebaceous cysts. Now, what it really is a plugged oil pore, okay? If you don't feed enough omega-3 and omega-6 essential fatty acids in the ration, frozen fish, grass-fed beef, wild game, that sort of thing, if you don't have enough of that in the diet, the oil starts to plug up. The oil secretion that the Elkhounds do, double-coat dogs do, to keep the inner coat soft and supple, the oil plugs. The oil gets too thick, and it'll plug those pores. And they normally appear where the fur is the thickest, right above the spine here. And so a tremendous amount of oil flows up here and then runs down like this. It's just like gravity. And so when the oil plugs, it usually plugs up here first, all this region. So what you need to do is just get them on a high fish diet. Now, if you've got a coastal dog, coastal Elkhound, it will plug more rapidly than an interior dog. A dog that's raised on the interior of a country like Finland is fed more wild game, so it utilizes the omega-3s out of the wild game much better. It doesn't need as much fish, it needs fish. But this dog can adapt, has adapted over centuries of being inland. Now, the coastal dogs were fed a lot of fish. So a dog like Pretty Boy Leaf, you got to keep the fish high in the diet. And you feed fish frozen, and that will deal with this whole nonsense that these are hereditary, because they're in every double coat dog. And primarily, it shows up in coastal varieties, and it's because of the way you're feeding. And you're not putting enough oil in the diet. You're just not putting enough fish in the diet. And you can take and use fish oils and fish extracts, but ideally get frozen fish and get wild game, because wild game has a high concentration of grass-fed, the omega-3s that it gets right out of the grass. So that's perfect there. Now, I want to talk a little bit more about the longevity problems, and that with a closed breeding system. A closed breeding loop is when you have dogs that are only in a certain group bred together, and you only use the dogs in that group. Dogs in a closed breeding loop will go extinct. It's a guaranteed fact. Nobody can dispute that. It's the way it is. So what happens over time is the genetics get weaker and weaker. Now, breeding practices are the root cause of these problems for most dogs. Now, I'll use a different breed again. I'll use the Doberman. All right. When I was a young guy, I knew some guys with Dobermans. Beautiful, beautiful dogs. I really thought they were nice. They were nice, big, strong, healthy, big dogs, and well cared for and well bred. And was a really nice thing to see them. Now, in the UK alone, let's just say in the 1980s, there was between 6,000 and 7,000 of those big Dobermans registered. Okay? They were in a closed breeding loop, obviously. Now, what happened was they went with the popular sire mentality over the years, meaning the guy that won the show is who they all used. And they ended up breeding that guy to vast amounts of dogs, and they ran him through many, many breeding operations. And all of a sudden, recessive problems, recessive genes that were not apparent in diverse operations, diverse breeding, breeders that are not running line breeding or inbreeding, recessive doesn't show up. The problem doesn't show up. But once you get a whole bunch of people using the popular sire concept and you're running one guy across many, many operations, even if he's only in 4 generations back, for example, but he's in your operation now, all of a sudden issues will start to occur. Today in the UK, around 60 to 70% of the Dobermans have a very significant heart risk. Their lifespan went from about 14 years to 8. They register around 700 to 900 a year, maybe 1,000 at best. And that's in the span from the 80s till today. Will they be able to save the Doberman? I have my doubts, okay? I don't think they're prepared to do what's necessary, so I don't think I'll be talking about this dog in 2034 and sitting here with this dog probably 10 years from now still talking, and the Doberman will be down to 300-400 registrations in the UK or less. And by the time a generation goes by, I'll still be talking about, you know, genetic offspring of the mother of this dog and sisters and so on, and the Doberman will be extinct. Now, you cannot underestimate the power of diverse genetics. You have to have diversity in the breeding operation. And so breeders need to maintain their own lines going down. They cannot run one dog across the whole works. Golden Retrievers, they ran into a problem here, I don't know how many years ago it was, but they ran a super stud out across it. 1,800 pups. A item to so many was unbelievable. Now, who in their right mind would do that? But anyway, none of them were in their right mind. Of course, they were all brainwashed. But that's okay. We're not brainwashed, a lot of us. But we are full-blood breeders, so we use genetics from all over the place. We've got, in almost every litter these days, we've got somebody from it. We have at least 4 countries represented, and very diverse in each country, and very distinctly different in them all. Now, when you're looking at running things, and I just want to check my camera. Stay. It's okay. Yeah, okay. Come here. We'll wrap this up pretty much, but genetic diversity is a very big deal, and we practice genetic diversity. And genetic diversity is why recessive problems don't show up, okay? The minute that you start line breeding, all of them show up. They can sit in the lineage. You may not know about them for 15, 20 years if you're diverse, and they may never appear. But you start line breeding and problems will show up, and it's a well-known fact. So diversity has to be paramount. And of course, we need to step away from the concept of closed breeding pools. I'm all done with that, believe me. I'm well over that years ago. In fact, never even got started in it, right? Because I knew the dangers of that system. And I've been involved with these dogs since in my diaper. And we were well aware that you have to use the full spectrum of the genetic. You cannot close loop and think you're going to have strong dogs in the end. the lifespan will shorten, disease will come up, litters will not thrive, and soon you'll have no dogs left. And it's very apparent in some breeds these days. So what we're doing here at Camilla is we're raising very diverse genetics, we're raising very healthy dogs, we're promoting very healthy concepts. We want people to follow our recommendations on food, lifestyle, grounding, all of that, water especially. And I need you all to, help us preserve the breed by also keeping the dogs intact. We can't just non-stop neuter and spay. That's out of line. And I found out how bad that habit is when I was looking for a stud dog in my own lines, in my own pups. And so we need to all come together and work as stewards of dogs to preserve way more genetics. And other breeds have to do the same thing. It's not just this breed. We've all got to step up to the plate. So I want to have you contact me about the litters coming up like this. We've got 2 dogs right now, and we got 2 Norwegian litters coming. But we have some phenomenal dogs. But I hope those tips and that intel is useful and helpful. Ayla and I, we're going to have drink water, and then we'll get ready, and we're heading back down the bear trail. She's a dream on the bear trail. She can tell me where everything is. It's a phenomenal dog. So I'll wrap this baby up.